Don't spend time with the shame. Sometimes we spend way more time with shame than we do with the Savior. We spend too much time in our own disappointment of ourselves, and we forget about the appointment with the King. And as he testifies concerning himself that this is now fulfilled in your hearing, we get to see the glory of the Son of God in real time. Which brings us to Matthew chapter 8. So we're going to see the supremacy of Christ shown in all of these different areas. So my encouragement to you is to find the area that you just might see yourself as one of the people. In what area do I need to elevate my own faith concerning who he is? And I don't need to have faith in my faith. I need to have faith in the Son of God. Matthew chapter 8, starting in verse 14, it says this: when Jesus came, and we'll spend some time in here, watch this. When Jesus came into Peter's house, he saw Peter's mother-in-law lying in bed with a fever. This is Simon Peter. This is Peter. It says this in verse 15, he touched her hand and the fever left her. In the book of Luke, it says that the people asked Jesus to do something, asked him to help her, and he did. He touched her hand and the fever left her. She got up and began to wait on him. I'm going to pause here so we can look at this. This is what's so amazing about Jesus in this passage right here. Verse 14, I'm going to highlight some words here. Jesus came into her space, into the place she's lying with this fever. Jesus came and saw the need. So he's not unaware. I want you to understand something about Jesus. Jesus is not unaware. He knows the need. He knows what's going on. He's fully aware. The request comes, help, please, help. Sometimes we live in need and we never ask for help. So they ask, help. And he does. Takes his hand, puts it on her, and then the fever leaves. Look at this. Jesus came, the fever left. Jesus came, the fever left. So I remember when I first got born again, Jesus came and fear began to leave. Jesus comes, insecurity begins to leave. Why? Because I cry out to him concerning the need, and he takes his hands and lays his hands in the area where the lack is, where the pain is, where the hurt is, where the fever is in this case, puts his hand right there. Why? Because he is so intentional with what he does. So he puts his hand right there in the fever leaf. And then what she does is gets up and begins to serve. You know, sometimes he does a work and we don't take that work and apply it. She takes this work that he has done and immediately begins to serve him. What area can you serve him? What area has he brought healing to that you can then take and begin to serve him out of? Same house, same people. The only thing that shifted was what was in her. As soon as it shifted, what'd she do? She got up in the same environment of healing. This is an environment now that serves as a testimony, and word begins to spread. So Jesus comes into this space, Peter's house, taking care of his mother. She's sick, can't do nothing about it. Jesus, can you please help? Yeah. So then there's this miracle worker on this personal level. Then, when evening came, verse 16, many who were demon possessed were brought to him. First, it was this infirmity. Now it's this authority that has been given to the enemy that Jesus is now about to take back. The demon possessed were brought to him, and he drove out the spirits with a word and healed all the sick. He is the miracle worker in every way. This was to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet in Isaiah 53, which is what we read in the very beginning. He took up our infirmities and bore our disease. You know what to take up means? It means to carry. He's carrying this. And to bear, this is the word that it means. It means this word, it says bore our disease. Carry, burdensome, to be gravid. Do you know what gravid is? Pregnant. He is taking full ownership of what I struggle with. He came to take that and carry that himself. And what's going to be produced through that is life. It was to fulfill what was written about him 700 years. I'm just saying, if you don't trust him, they were talking about him way before he showed up. So what area of my life do I need to trust him in? What area of my life have I not taken the reality of his status, his position, his existence as the miracle worker, and not said, Jesus, touch this touch this? What area have I asked him to touch that I have to keep asking him, Lord, touch this? Touch my unforgiveness. Touch my pain. Touch my exhaustion. Touch. And look at this, verse 18, we're going to continue on. When Jesus saw the crowd, look at this. So now he's at Peter's house. Word begins to spread as to what Jesus has done. Now there's many people. So it's not now just personal, now it's public. Miracle worker publicly, not just privately, publicly. When Jesus saw the crowd around him, he gave orders to cross to the other side of the lake. And then a teacher of the law came to him and said, Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go. Anybody ever said that? Jesus said, foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. Look, he's saying, you following me? Don't look for comfort. He wasn't pierced so that I could relax, and he wasn't crushed so that I could be comfortable. So if you want comfort, following Jesus ain't going to make you comfortable, but it is the greatest decision that you could ever make. So he says in verse 20, foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. And another disciple said to him, Lord, first let me go and bury my father. This is a hard word that Jesus is giving, but he's using hyperbole so that we can rightly prioritize. So he says, but Jesus told him, follow me and let the dead bury their own dead. That's a hard one, because what's he talking about? Obviously, the guy that's asking to bury his dad is not physically dead. So Jesus is using this hyperbole to say, don't prioritize the natural things over the supernatural things. So if you're going to follow me, let's go. He's not saying don't have a funeral for your dad. This is something he's using to show that sometimes in life we can prioritize natural over supernatural. So if we're going to follow him, we have to be able to rightly distinguish at what time something should happen. I'm just saying, if you're going to follow Jesus, the miracle worker, in every way, it's not going to be comfortable all the time. And I have to learn on this journey how to prioritize his work. Y'all know what I'm saying? How to prioritize his work. Sometimes his work and my work are not the same work. Sometimes what I want to do is not always what he wants me to do. So I have to say to the one that I'm following, what will you have? Because the guy that says, you wherever you go, how many of us in this room have ever said that? They follow him right into a storm. All of these things that I'm reading, these are all happening sequentially. This is not like something that happened one day and then 6 months later and then 3 weeks later. This is like one right after another that's happening. Jesus comes in, heals Peter's mother-in-law, and then all these people start to come. And then he begins healing them. And then he says, okay, let's get in the boat and let's cross over. Verse 23 says, then he got into the boat and his disciples followed him right into a storm. They didn't look out and see the storm. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say the disciples, when they got in the boat, they were like, man, it's not looking good out here, Jesus. Wouldn't it be nice to see every storm before it shows up? But this is a suddenly right here. It says suddenly. They got into the boat to follow the miracle worker, and then suddenly happened. Suddenly there was a storm. And they just watched Jesus. The same guy that watched Jesus heal his mother-in-law is in the boat too. And you don't hear him say, guys, don't you remember what he did? Remember all the people that came over to the crib, like everyone showed up, we was healing, and it was amazing. No, it wasn't that. You know, the suddenly sometimes can move any of us. Any of us can be rocked by a suddenly. But he is still the miracle worker. It says, then he got into the boat and his disciples followed him. Suddenly, a furious storm came upon the lake, so that the waves swept over the boat, but Jesus was sleeping. And I want to encourage you with something. Just because he doesn't have the same level of activity as you doesn't mean he's not present. He's still present. Jesus is still in the boat. The disciples went and woke him saying, Lord, save us. That's an exclamation point. They're yelling. Why? Because it suddenly happened. Panic ensued. And at least they went to the right person. At least they weren't like, let them sleep. We'll figure this out. Sometimes we do that. So we start working with everybody who they don't know what to do either. These are fishermen too. So you would think that they would know what to do. But they didn't say, we got this. We'll figure this out. Sometimes I do that. Sometimes we all do that. We talk to people first instead of talking to him. At least they went to him and they say, Lord, save us.